All right, we're talking Wake Forest football with Conor O'Neill. He is the publisher. That's right, the publisher of Deacons Illustrated, Wake Rivals, at Wake Rivals. You want to check him out on Twitter. And also, you can just go to the website, wakeforest.rivals.com. It's the first time we've had you on, Conor. So thanks for taking your time to do this. I know it's a really hectic time of season for you.
Yeah, it's football season, and we're really ramped up in that. And then basketball season is right here. Starts Monday night, so it's a busy time in Tobacco Road territory.
Is it going to be a good, successful, exciting college basketball season?
There's a lot of questions to be answered, both Wake Forest wise, and I also covered Duke, and they've got some questions too. They've got at least two of their three best players probably out for the opener. So yeah, they'll have some bigger questions than most teams to answer.
Interesting. You covered Duke too. Wow. Okay. Big difference between Duke basketball and football, but the football team's doing well, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity to talk to you at some time about the football team too, because I've been behind them almost from the get-go after the start they got off to. They've impressed me considerably, and I'm sure all Duke fans, nobody expected the season they're having. So as far as Wake Forest, though, the main reason I wanted to have you on here in the short time we have is to talk about Sam Hartman. I know it's the worst possible time to have you on after his worst game, but he has really stepped up his game in my mind this season. I think everybody looked at you look at the big two, and then all of a sudden, Hendon Hooker comes in, and you got these other kids to keep an eye on, whether it's Levis, and I'm a big Grayson McCall fan. But Sam Hartman was always, he's a second-round guy. Is that what he is? He's just a typical second-round guy. He's just not going to sneak into the first. He's just not that good. But now I'm questioning whether or not he is a first-round draft pick after the season he's had.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The moxie has always been there for Sam. Like that, I don't know how quantifiable that is for the
NFL.
Helps.
Like
nobody. Yeah. Arm strength wise, I think he is not gonna. He's not gonna jump off the page like a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but he does have some creativity outside the pocket. He threw, even the turnovers against Louisville make that game pretty hard to digest overall, but he did make some really accurate throws over the middle, moving across his body when Wake wasn't completely out of the game. So yeah, I try to stay away from the round projections, especially with Wake's offense being as unique as it is. That was one of the driving factors to why Jamie Newman felt like he had to leave Wake Forest to better his pro career, was because he had heard that he needed to get out of the slow mesh and triple option basically offense. So I think whether it's a Senior Bowl or whether it's combine and pro day type stuff, I think that's where NFL guys really have to see Sam and kind of evaluate, okay, is he just a product of being in this really, really successful, unique college offense? Or is there a, future NFL starting quarterback there?
Yeah, no question. That's going to really dictate, or like you said, especially more than anything, Senior Bowl week. And look, I look at that Clemson game, and that's the thing that really kind of sticks out at me, because I always talk about this with top players. I want to see how you play when you go up against the best teams, especially at quarterback. And yeah. I mean, it wasn't his fault they lost. I mean, he did everything they could. I mean, that was probably his best game of his career.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, given the level of opponent, it was his first game throwing 6 touchdowns.
That's a good defense.
Yeah, and it's a good it does, like, once you start really digging into it, you have to put the qualifier of Clemson was down, I think, 3 of their top 5 defensive backs. Yeah. So you have to, not the whole grain of salt, but just a little bit of the grain of salt with his numbers in that game. But yeah, Sam, I feel like I am qualified to say, covering the kid for 5 years, he'll get in a rhythm, and you'll see him get in a rhythm. You saw it in the third quarter of that Clemson game where every throw he makes is just going to be on the money, and it's going to be in a position where only his guy can make the play on the ball. And when he gets like that, it feels like any handoff,
Is a
any
waste.
keep by him, it's a bad play. It's a net negative. Even if it's like an 8-yard run on first down, it's still, well, yeah, but you've been throwing for 30 yards downfield every play. So why is that an 8-yard run a good play?
What you said, his arm strength, of course, may not be elite, but are there any other facets of his game that you think he needs to do a little bit better, be a little bit better at?
Yeah, this is what makes it tough, is talking about this after Louisville when he had 6 turnovers in a quarter. You know, it's funny because leading up to the Louisville game, I've kind of marveled at the fact that how often he's gotten hit when he's got one hand on the ball and he's able to hold on to it. And now against Louisville, they were able to jar it loose 4 times, really. He had one in the first half that should have been a lost fumble that the replay review didn't award Louisville with, but he is ball secure. He's just had a couple games where it snowballs on him, and to his defense, Dave Clawson pointed out, the 6 turnovers against Louisville, he's only really directly responsible for one of them. Like the first pick 6 was a receiver running a comeback route that he just didn't come back fully.
Okay.
The other interception was Donovan Green. It goes through his hands off his shoulder pad and 15 feet into the air. 2 of the blindside strips were just offensive linemen getting worked over, and he takes the ball back and somebody's there to hit the ball out of his hand. And the last pick 6 was, it was a bad throw. It was erratic, but he also had a blitzing linebacker push a running back into his back, and he couldn't step up and throw an accurate ball. So, yeah, it's so tough to talk about in light of the most recent, like the last thing we saw was this catastrophic game from him. But he is ball secure. Like, I swear, I'm not making stuff up.
Trust me, and we all know this. If you can point those specific situations out, the scouts know that too. Yeah. Then they're with you. They're not going to hold that against them. Right. Maybe the average novice guy does need to know that though, and that's part of what we're trying to do here and explain that kind of stuff. Because again, that is forgivable, especially. And I don't know whether or not this really was a part of the game, but the one thing I was like, when I was handicapping the game, I was like, yeah, you know what? They're a 3-point favorite, but they're so much better than Louisville. This should be an easy game. But then I talked about saying the only thing I'm worried about is after that Syracuse loss to Clemson, do they collectively kind of know it's over? That they can't really win the ACC now, and now they're playing a game that really doesn't matter. And I wonder whether or not the players just weren't. And then you see all the turnovers, and I go, maybe that's what happened. Maybe they just weren't focused. Maybe it was just one of those letdown games.
That's a good point. I'm kind of kicking myself because I hadn't thought of that. Because the players even told us after the Boston College game, coming off their off week, that they were watching the Syracuse-Clemson game, and they were kind of invested in, okay, we need Clemson to lose 2. So for Clemson to lose 2, they've got to lose at least 1. And let's see if Syracuse up 21-10 going into the fourth quarter, right? Let's see if they can get that done and keep our hopes alive of getting back to Charlotte. And you're right. Like it takes the wind out of your sails when Clemson scores I think 17 points in the fourth quarter to win that game and kind of steal it. And I mean, even if Clemson loses to Louisville now, it's still Clemson in Charlotte. I mean, that ticket is all but punched at this point.
Yeah, it's and it's disappointing, and I get it, especially for a veteran quarterback like Hartman, because this is it for him. And they went to the championship game last year, so they had accomplished something really special that nobody thought that they were going to be able to accomplish. So I can understand how he might feel. What let's in the last couple of minutes I have with you, let's talk about any other players we need to keep an eye on between now and bowl season when we're zeroing in on potential prospects. Who else might be a pro prospect on this team for 2023?
The first one I think of is Rondell Bothroyd, the defensive end. He's a fifth-year guy, and he's like Sam. He's got that extra sixth year if he wants it. I'm sure Wake would love to have him, but there's also exists the opportunity to make real money and not just NIL money. And we don't have to beat around the bush and act like Wake Forest has the USC NIL money.
That's true.
Like it's Wake Forest NIL.
That's a good point, though, because so Hartman has an extra year of eligibility.
Yeah, and he has said since the spring, because he was putting social media stuff out there that said one more year, and I went to him in the spring and was like, Sam, you put this one more year stuff out, but you've got 2 left. Like, are you telling us that this is the last one? And he said, yeah. He said it's going to be time. And you can kind of tell from talking to Sam, from seeing, it does seem like he's not going to be a guy that wants to be around college for a 6th year. I think he's got an old birthday.
Okay.
I think he turned 23, maybe. He's either 22 or 23, and he's one of those late July, early August birthdays.
Okay.
But yeah, getting back to Rondell. Rondell is a field end. He's 6'4", 270. He is a monster. And he plays a position that has made pros in the last 6 years. With Duke Ejiofor was a 6th-round pick of the Texans. Yes. That was injury-based, and he couldn't stay healthy in the pros. And then Rondell took over the starting spot for Boogie Basham, who was a 2nd-round pick of the Bills and is getting some significant snaps for them right now. So that position in Wake's defense has produced good players, and Rondell is kind of the next in line.
Okay. Good one. How about A.T. Perry?
A.T. Perry was going to be the next one off my mind. I mean, he's a 6'5", 200-ish pound receiver. He goes up and wins jump balls. I know in the NFL you've got to get separation, and he gets more separation than Scotty Washington and Sage Surratt did as Wake's previous outside guys. I think the NFL probably still wants to see more separation from him. Like I think the NFL wants burners, right? They want guys to run past DBs, not guys that can jump over DBs. Sure.
But there's still a place in the NFL for size, and if you do a good job, like you said, of separation, there's still a need for that, especially in the red zone. Teams struggling, good teams struggle in the red zone all the time.
Yeah. So he's definitely going to be. He's another one that's a 5th-year guy. They really had a good recruiting class 5 years ago. He, I think, is even more so than the other 2 is ready to be a pro.
Okay.
He's ready to be moved on. He's not going to be back next year for a 6th year in my mind. And I think he can make a run. He can. I don't know if he's a draft pick or if he's a priority free agent guy. But
with receivers, Dan Schonke used to always tell me every year we would go into the whole process of, especially when we were breaking out wide receivers, and I would say, "What do you think?" And he would always start off the first day of our shows, and I said, "It all depends on what he runs." That's what they want to see. For wide receivers, what do you run? Because we don't know. Some of these guys, they have put up tremendous stats. I ran a 4.5 or a 4.55. Well, 4th round, 5th round, something like that. And we saw it even just past year. I forget which receiver it was. It was Burks. Everybody thought Burks could be a top 10 draft pick, and he had such a bad 40 time that he slid. And a lot of people were surprised he actually was a 1st-round draft pick. So, yeah. But as far as Perry, though, and you talked about some of the other good receivers that have been there that have come out for the last few years from Wake. You put him at the top?
Yeah, I would say he's better than their outside guys that they've had before, Sage and Scotty. I hate that Sage had his career go the way that it went. A lot of people point at him not playing in the COVID season. He opted out about a week and a half, 2 weeks before the season opener. And people point at him not playing as the reason he went undrafted and has had difficulty sticking. It's really the fact that, going back to what you said about what time do you run, he had a surgery about a month before his pro day workout, and he still ran his 40, and he ran a terrible time. And it looked even worse when he runs his terrible 40, and then he's got a defensive lineman in Boogie Basham who runs faster.
Yeah, not good.
So that's something that, just to kind of give you a little bit of history on Wake and receivers. Like, I think Sage would have been better served. I guess I'm trying to preface why I think AT is a little better position than Sage at this point.
Anyone else? I mean, I know Smenda's having a solid season and is a decent player. Carson in the secondary. I also note here is a pretty decent player, and they have also a couple decent offensive linemen.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Kalen Carson has put enough tape out there. He's been hurt.
Okay.
Missed the last 5 games last year. He's missed 4 or 5 this year. He just got back against Louisville.
Okay.
The guards, Sean McGinn and Loic Nagasam-Naya, the uphill battle for every Wake offensive lineman going from Wake to the NFL is they've got to put on weight, and it's got to be good weight. Wake keeps their offensive linemen around 300 pounds because you can't be an offense that runs 80 to 90 plays a game and have 330 and 340 pound offensive linemen. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why, like, Zach Tom was maybe 300 pounds last year playing left tackle at Wake. And it was a big deal. Like, I wrote this whole thing about Zach Tom at Pro Day because he was up to 312, and that was going to make him draftable. And sure enough, he's drafted in the 4th round and starting games for the Packers. So the one that you didn't mention that I am really curious to see where he goes is Kobe Turner.
Okay.
He's a defensive tackle. It's his only year at Wake after he grad transferred in from Richmond. I mean, I take Pro Football Focus for what it's worth. It's a research tool.
Absolutely.
It's not the end all be all.
Yes.
They have him graded at like a 92 or 93 overall. He is ferocious up front as a nose tackle. I get confused in the 3-tech, 4-tech stuff, but his season this year is proving that some of the previous defensive tackles Wake has had that I thought were really good, he's making me rethink whether they were actually good or. Yeah, he's
so it's legitimate. What you're saying is what your eyes are telling you is being backed up by Pro Football Focus. Okay.
Yes, he's Kobe Turner is there are some plays where he looks like a man among boys. Okay. It's I had some fun with him earlier this year, asking him like what took so long for him to make the jump to a P5 program, because I think he was the CAA Defensive Player of the Year last year.
Okay.
Like he was good. It wasn't like he was a diamond in the rough. But he definitely could have been playing Power 5 football for the last few years based on what I've seen this year.
So good sleeper then to keep an eye on. Yeah. At least right now he's a sleeper. We'll find out what happens when, again, these guys get around, and who knows where he gets invited to play, whether it's the Senior Bowl or the Shrine. So, all right. So I tell you what, I know you got to run. That was, by the way, Carson, is he a true sophomore or a 3rd-year sophomore?
He's a 3rd year.
So he is eligible.
Yeah. Wake on their roster doesn't count the COVID year with most of the guys. So a lot of times you'll see a sophomore on there, but they'll be a 3rd-year guy.
So yes, I look forward to talking to you again, Conor, at some point, hopefully, before we even get too deep into the off season, before the draft, and maybe we can, especially once the NFL scouts really get a hold of these guys and we finally start hearing a little bit more about what's going on, then maybe we can kind of edge in there on your take. And same thing with Duke, since you covered Duke. Do you cover Duke and Wake evenly?
I try to. I'm sure both sides would prefer me just pick one and punt on the other, but I can't do that if I want the money to keep coming.
Well, they don't play every year, though, right? That's good.
They do.
Oh, they do play every year in football. Really, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Even though they're in different divisions.
Yeah, the ACC. You've had one permanent crossover,
and they're the permanent crossover. good for you, right? That's like having you're the father at a game or something. Who do I choose? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 1 week out of the season that I don't have to worry about, okay, both teams are home. Which one am I going to go to and which one do I need a senior for?
That's true. All right, Conor, appreciate it. Great job helping us out here. And again, best of luck the rest of the season. And we look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
All right. Thanks, Greg. I really appreciate it.